Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 36, where we are going to have a look at another modifier error. So if you didn't have a look at lesson 35, go back and have a look at lesson 35 now, because that's where I introduced the idea of what a modifier is. Now this modifier error, misplaced modifiers, is a problem, but it's more likely to create embarrassment than a genuine misunderstanding. Squinting modifiers, because of the way that you create a sentence, might allow a sentence to be understood in two different ways, and the legal effects of that are clear. This, on the other hand, is less likely to cause that kind of high-level problem. Rather, it's going to make you look a little bit foolish. So, from that point of view, we need to find out what it is and how we can not make that mistake and stop you guys from suffering any embarrassment. So let's get started. Okay, so as we know from lesson 35, a modifier is a word that changes the meaning of another word. Adjectives and adverbs are the most common types. But modifiers don't necessarily have to be just words. They can be phrases as well. So it could be a phrase which is 2 words long, it could be a phrase which is 5 or 6 or even 7 words long. And generally these phrases include a preposition. So there are a couple of things to be aware of here. Not just a word, could be a phrase. These phrases generally include prepositions. But the rules remain the same as regards placement. That is to say, we want to put that phrase as close as possible to the thing that we want to modify. So that bit stays the same. And the reason why this problem exists is also the same. If you don't put it in the correct place, then the effect is that you can create a funny sentence or a funny second meaning, which is going to create more embarrassment more than a fatal legal problem. So that's the introduction to a misplaced modifier. It's a phrase which is put in the wrong place, which can cause embarrassment. So let's just have a look at an example. So the memo was sent to the client with errors. Okay, take a second here to find the misplaced modifier. And of course, it's those last 2 words, with errors. And because of the misplacement of that modifier, it makes it sound as if the client has got errors, which is, of course, somewhat embarrassing. If you are going to write this to a partner or a supervisor in the company and you're saying that you sent a memo to a client and the client has got errors, that's clearly not what you meant. You meant to say that it was the memo that had errors, not the client. And I think any common sense understanding would arrive at that result. But this is how the embarrassment is caused. Your boss or your supervisor will have a chuckle, will phone you up and say, "What do you mean that the client has got errors?" If it stays in-house, that's not so much of a problem. If a misplaced modifier goes outside of the company, if it goes to the client themselves, that's when we have a slightly more serious problem, and that's when it's an even bigger sense of embarrassment. So this is why misplaced modifiers are something that you've got to watch out for. Of course, if we were looking at a suggested redraft, we would say this: the memo with errors was sent to the client. Or we could say the incorrect memo, or the unfinished memo, or the draft of the memo. We can say a number of different things here, and those other alternatives which I gave you are important because it moves away from that prepositional phrase. So the draft memo. So here we've got an adjective which is communicating the fact that this memo is not finished, and perhaps that language is really what we should be saying. Okay, so here are the teaching tips. This is an English writing error, just like squinting modifiers. And just like squinting modifiers, I have never seen this in any general English, business English, legal English, generic legal English course book that I've ever worked with. So this is something that you may not be aware of. So look for resources on the internet, go to Google, type in misplaced modifiers, or have a look at legal English writing books, for example, those done by Brian Garner or Richard Widdick, to find out more about what this problem is. In practice, you will only be able to identify this error by being aware and reviewing your writing. If you're not aware of the problem, you're not going to spot it, and if you don't review your writing, you're not going to spot it. So we need to think of writing in the wider context as part of a process which involves planning, writing, and reviewing. And if you're not doing those three things, then you're not setting yourself up to writing a successful piece of writing. This is also related to the topic of quasi-passives, or the lazy use of by plus somebody or something. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a second. And this is surprisingly common. This form of misplaced modifier by putting by plus person just at the end of the sentence because of bad habits. Please check out my other videos on passives to review those rules. But in general, how can we overcome this? By thinking about our basic message and keeping those elements together. So once again, going back to those lessons at the beginning of the course, lessons 1 and 2 and sentences, and even the lessons where I talk about emphasis, keeping the important parts of the message together, and that way you're going to avoid this problem. But to take the takeaway issue, the main takeaway issue from this and the last lesson is that the general rule of modifiers is this: keep the modifier as close as possible to the thing just behind my head, the thing being modified. So if you're going to remember just one thing, make sure you remember that thing. Okay, time for questions. And once again, these questions are available to the people who have joined me and supported me on my Patreon page. Thank you very much, guys. You can download the questions, and of course, you've got access to my answer videos as well to see if your answers are similar to my answers. If you haven't joined me or on Patreon, then please think about doing so. So I'd like you to have a look at the questions and redraft them to solve the problem of the misplaced modifier. And here is an example where I talk about quasi-passives. So the crime scene was secured to stop evidence being taken by the police. What does this mean? It sounds like the police that they're trying to stop the police from taking evidence away from the crime scene, which is of course not what we meant to say. We're meant to say that the police are stopping other people from taking evidence away from the crime scene. But because of this bad habit, this use of quasi-passives, of people just saying by the, and putting that at the end of the sentence, then you start creating slightly ridiculous sentences, which, as I said, are just going to embarrass you a little bit. So if we are going to keep that prepositional phrase, then we've got to put it in the right place. The crime scene was secured by the police to stop evidence being taken. We can, of course, use the active voice. The police secured the crime scene to stop evidence being taken. And that would be the best result, in my opinion. But that, of course, means going back to the basics and thinking about your main message. And in my questions, you might have to do exactly that.